Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're in the middle of the culminating phase of the second wave of the world economic depression. And don't forget, that's what it is. It doesn't have anything to do with Greeks being lazy or any other such thing. It is a world economic breakdown crisis of awesome, incredible, unprecedented genocidal proportions. And to reduce this to some people are industrious and others are profligate. This is typical Wall Street divide and conquer British Foreign Office, City of London propaganda made for idiots. If you believe that stuff, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. There's nothing more I can do for you. So now we're looking at the voices that are heard in the last couple of days. Christine Lagarde, the U.S. agent who now heads the well, maybe she's a British agent. I'm sorry. Maybe she has more status. But Lagarde says the world economy is now in a dangerous place. Thank you, Christine. Bob Zoellick says that there's a new economic danger zone. Thanks, Bob. And Tiny Tim Geithner says there will not be any new Lehmans. Well, I'm not prepared to accept that one either. The European Union had been trying to get the Chinese to buy up debt and to commit themselves, and I think the Chinese are well advised not to, and the Europeans also, they ought to think twice before they start bringing in Chinese foremen and Chinese overlords, because you're going to find that the Chinese overlord doesn't understand the social safety net like so many post-communists. They just don't get that part of it, right? They were told that capitalism was the exploitation of man by man, and now, as capitalists, they're going to try to do it. Now, we've also got a rogue trader. No panic would be complete without one. And you know what this is, right? As they say in Wall Street, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked all the time, right? So this is now Kweku Adoboli of UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland branch in London, and he allegedly blew $2 billion on what? On derivatives trades. Once again, you want to avoid this kind of stuff. Ban derivatives, ban collateralized debt obligations, ban credit default swaps, and tax the other ones, the other run-of-the-mill derivatives. So it's another aspect of the derivatives crisis. He's in the great tradition of Nick Leeson out in Singapore and Courvielle. And these people are all in the gray area because they're given autonomy. They're told to go out and make ripoffs. And then when it doesn't pan out, there's implausible deniability for the firm. So the basic idea here is if this repo market seizes up, and that could happen next week or maybe later, right, because it takes a while. Right? We've got all of September, October, and into November for this to happen, then that is going to look pretty bad. Now, the German Constitutional Court says that the German participation in the bailout is legal, but an open-ended commitment to Eurobonds is not legal. I'll give you the line on these things. We're against bailouts, of course. We don't want to bail out any derivatives, and we don't want Eurobonds either. But here's the problem. We have this professorial opposition, I guess, in Germany. These are professors who believe the system ought to work. They do not seem to be aware that they are in a world economic depression. They really have nothing to answer on that. And you see them, they come forward and say, well, the euro is illegal, these bailouts are illegal, everything you want to do is illegal. All right, great. Is this not a sterile and legalistic argument? They're also obsessed with debt. They're obsessed with the debt burden, the idea that debt eventually has to be paid off. Well, you look at Alexander Hamilton, it's not quite that simple, right? The existence of a funded national debt can be a real advantage. Now, you don't want it to go beyond certain levels, and you don't want the interest rates to be too high. But as Alexander Hamilton can show you, having it is not the equivalent of original sin. So sterile legalistic arguments may appeal to a kind of, what can we say, middle-class audience. But even if you implement this, where are you at the end? You're still sitting in a world economic depression. And if you destroy the euro as part of your efforts, you have obviously helped the CIA and the British in their attack on the euro, because that's clearly who's doing all this. You have sent water to their mill, and you've got the D-mark. You get the D-mark back. All right, so suppose you get it back. How did all of this come about? Once again, when the D-mark was standing alone at the end of the 1960s and the beginning of the 1970s, what happened? Even in those days, billions, today trillions of hot money flowed into the D-mark to drive it up, up, up. And this was the existential problem that German governments, right, from Helmut Schmidt as finance minister and then as chancellor, faced. If you have a D-mark standing alone, it will be driven into outer space. That will destroy German export economy. The euro is an important shield for the D-mark, so it does not stand alone. It's a great advantage for Germany. It creates a unified European economic space in which Germany can dominate. And it also obviates these problems of what are you going to do, collect tariffs if you send your parts from Cologne into Belgium and then back to Cologne to make automobiles. This is crazy. These mini-states, micro-states, are too small. They're easy prey for the Anglo-Americans. If only you can see it most obviously in the area of speculation. So through the snake in the tunnel, the European rate mechanism, the exchange rate mechanism, into the various precursors of the euro, it's a process which is dictated not just by the fact that you have crazy, politically correct Bilderberger agents running around in Brussels spouting about neoliberal economics and European integration and Europe of the banks and cartels. It also grows out of the need to defend the German economy against the obvious questions of speculation. So at one point or other in this process, as I've said before, you're going to have to fight the speculators. Maybe you think you can do it better as the D-mark all alone. I assure you can't. That will not be as effective. Better to defend the line you have now. Why run away? Why capitulate to the CIA and MI6, to the City of London and Wall Street? Why capitulate? Why surrender? Has nothing been learned? All that sad German historical experience in the 20th century? I think something ought to be learned. Anyway, the sterile legal arguments don't help you. You've got to have a political strategy. One expert said at the end of it all, what should happen? Well, he said people should either vote in some other way or they should go on the streets. Well, where does that leave you? With what program? Fighting for what? How can you tear down what exists without having a fully developed, fully articulated programmatic alternative? You're going to destroy the euro and then have the leap in the dark and then let people decide to go on the streets and see what percolates up out of that? Civilization will collapse. That's what it leads to. The chaotic collapse of the euro would be a huge defeat for human civilization in toto. Now, obviously we want to reform the euro from within. How do we do it? Let's defend the line. Merkel and Sarkozy say Greece should stay in the euro. All right, fine. How do we do it? What does Greece need? Well, first of all, Greece needs a unilateral debt moratorium. They can't pay this debt. They've got to declare that they're going into a unilateral debt freeze. Many great countries have done it. Look at these great nations, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and again, Argentina did it in the most clever way. Don't wait for the bankers to negotiate a haircut. Don't wait for debt restructuring. You get a much better deal if you're doing it under the essentially legal auspices of a uniform, orderly, declared public debt freeze, debt moratorium for the duration of the world economic depression, or 10 years maybe, whichever lasts longer. So don't wait for the bankers to be the hairstylists. The haircut that the bankers will give you will not be a flattering one. You can take the hairstyling into your own power with a debt moratorium. Greece, do it now. Do it this week. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.